So, if I could start with just a basic question of, in your mind, what is your definition of knowledge brokering? When I think of knowledge brokering, I'm thinking of uh, the people that are able to understand the science and research in education, whether it's neuroscience, cognitive science, and so on, and also understand the needs of the educator, what the person in the classroom, and then the brokering is getting that knowledge, often in an academic form, in a usable form, and able to be implemented in the classroom.
Perfect. Yeah. Um, so this is amazing. So I'll start by telling you what Meghshala do. They build out lessons. So every single lesson that a teacher has to teach is built out in the way that it should be taught. If you value the kids, if you value action-based learning, if you value multidisciplinary approach to learning, if you value all the good things in a classroom, this is how you would run a lesson. So we actually have written every single lesson out for teachers who've never taught like this before. And in a very short time, you will understand why we did this. So once all the lessons are built out, we now had to scale it to cover a huge number of teachers, over 1 million teachers at this section of humanity can use them to upskill their lessons. So this, both hands in the pie, as it were, build out the lessons and scale it through the hands of every teacher that needs to use it, was what we were doing. When I read Bell Hooks's book, I realized that what I was actually doing was taking down one fence, a very important fence, which was standing in the way of teaching across different cultures. So there's one set of students in India that have been taught by teachers, and the students themselves are very academic and very mature in their understanding of things. And there's a whole lot of others who are first generation learners. So when we came to scaling, we realized that when we have first generation learners, they are almost always taught by first generation teachers. In that these teachers have never seen teaching as teaching should be. So when they teach like they were taught, they're teaching like it came out of 100, 200 years ago, which is very much sort of assimilating facts and then reproducing it in a very parroting them out, rather than actually understanding the concept behind what they're learning. So accidentally, we seem to have tripped over this knowledge brokering, which is the government of India says, this is the knowledge you have to transfer. And we have realized that the best way to transfer that is through a technology product. And how do we do this best of all to overcome this first generation learner teacher system? So this was all brought together and tied up by bell hooks, and it was quite amazing when I actually read it.
Just to interrupt, bell hooks, for the purpose of those listening, bell hooks is an author, was an author in the United States who wrote a number of books on connecting teaching to learning.
Yeah.
Is that a good summation?
That is a good explanation for the book that I read, but she's also all about taking down barriers, and one of the biggest barriers is intellectualism. So she says you have to hand it to the people to learn, and that take away this barrier that you're placing in their view of suddenly speaking a language that they don't understand, which is highfalutin philosophy and stuff like that. Make it practical, bring it down, make it theirs, and let them run with it, is the rough idea of what she says. Funnily enough, it actually impacts the whole of the global south. The youth in the global south are there to be educated. And we need to do away with non-equitability to actually make everyone educated to a certain level. And teaching does not reach this audience. If you teach in a very studied and intellectual kind of way, it's not accessible to them. So you have to somehow use the language and the intellectual power that we make into practical wisdom. That might work. And as I was saying, totally by accident, we did exactly this. And when we did this, it looked very much like it suddenly became a mass movement. We got the first 20 teachers, and these 20 teachers started to teach 20 other teachers, and these taught. And before we knew it, we've actually, in a very, without breaking sweat, it seems to have covered the ground in every state in this country. And that's a lot of states. It's a lot of geography. I mean, how did that happen? I have no idea. Even islands, sometimes people in the islands say, tiny islands in the middle of the Indian Ocean say, oh yeah, we've seen Meghshala, we use it in our classroom. And I think, what? How did that come together? So what we are trying to say is that if you make the classroom as a place where there is any kind of domination, whether it's a domination of race or gender or religion or high intelligence, or it is so intellectual that it's very distant from the people who are listening to it. And yet it actually is a very simple step. It's a very simple step in that I hold your hand and I tell you how to teach, and then I'm going to let you go. And if you trip up, you can always hold my hand again and I can teach you some more. And then if you think you've mastered it, I'll let you go. And you go ahead and hold somebody else's hand, is how it seems to work.
So if I could intervene right here and ask, who is that person? Is there a distinct knowledge broker? Or it sounds, some people talk about moving from the research to translation, and that is making it and putting it in language that practitioners, teachers can readily understand and use, but that's not implementation, and you're actually taking it to implementation.
Yeah.
And so how does that, who is there a middle person in there somewhere?
Right. So funnily enough, we were just going to be the knowledge brokers. We used implementation just to get feedback on how it was working on the ground. And once we got it perfected, we were going to put it up there and then walk away from it. And then the schools began to say, no, you have to teach us how to do this, and you do it best, and nobody else is able to do it as well as you. So these sort of things made us go back into implementation. So now, whether we like it or not, we are part knowledge brokers and part implementers. So it seems like we've shouldered that responsibility as well. And when you look at the kind of teachers we teach, the important peg in the whole thing is that these teachers, being first generation teachers, means they learn in a certain kind of way, like all craftsmen, because a beautiful carpenter is a craftsman. And he doesn't learn that from a book. He learns that from watching his father be a craftsman. And I think teaching is also very much like that. It is a crafting kind of thing where you craft a new knowledge, or you craft a new understanding, or you craft a new student. And you can only learn that from a master craftsman who is a master teacher, right? So it has to be, the teacher has to show you how to do this, and then you pick up the tricks from watching the teacher do this, repeat it in class, and if you are a true first generation learner, in about 1 or 2 or 3 repeats of this, the penny suddenly drops and you say, aha, so that's why that works. Now I know the theory behind what I've been practicing. It's quite the other way around in intellectual classrooms, where they first learn the theory and then they apply it to a new problem. Here they watch problem after problem being solved and they build their own theory from that. So it's the opposite of what happens in intellectual milieus.
It's very clear. Interestingly, though, you referenced the first generation teacher. How does this apply to those that have been in the classroom longer and have well-established styles of pedagogy?
Yeah. So I have to make a terrible confession. We have never moved away from the pedagogy that was put in our classrooms by our colonial masters. And this is not a problem that exists only in India. It exists in all colonized nations. You can go anywhere in the world that you want. And if that nation has been colonized, they have a very repetitive way of teaching for facts rather than thought. And a few countries have broken away from that. And you will find that the countries that break away from this fastest are the people who've never received education from another culture, as it were. We've received our education from there. This is the problem. It's a received education, and this is why we are so careful not to they don't want to replace their colonial masters with a set of Indian people who come up and say, hey, this is how you learn it. We sit and we build a lesson for them. We're going to do this in Africa. We're doing this in Zambia and Kenya. We build it from the bottom up, let's build an education for you, by you.
What role do you think that the Global Science of Learning Education Network can fill, promoting this and encouraging concepts of knowledge brokering?
I would say this conversation, for instance, is a huge affirmation of the value of something like this. Just you and me talking here is the very first step towards trying to find a global arena to put this out. And if the global arena needs this to have an intellectual background, then there's another step for knowledge brokering, where someone who's a very academic researcher can tell us, you've done the practicals. I think this is the theory that fits it. Let's lock it together and let's take it out into the intellectual world, that this is how it goes. And yet, in the global South, we can put this out and actually make a change for how education is going to take part in the future, which is not possibly growing the kind of knowledge that the colonial masters would want everyone to know.
Are there certain principles or concepts that the Global Science of Learning Education Network can be promoting? There's some universal concepts that people can pick up and use wherever they are?
I think first, democratizing something like this would be out of this world precious, So actually making it part of their culture to change the way their classroom looks. The culture of teaching, the culture of interaction between teachers and their students, which is very top down in the global South, and should so not be. It should be very much more of a conversation. It should be very much more of a suggestion. But you have to build the confidence of teachers to do that. So you'll have to flip the social standing of teachers.
So we've spoken a lot about the classroom and teachers in the classroom in their practice. What about the schools of teacher preparation? How our teachers are being prepared? How do we work there with knowledge brokering?
I think pretty much the same way, because these teachers who are first generation teachers are also of the belief that the person who actually teaches me knows everything and is being kind enough to share his knowledge or her knowledge with me. Not looking at it from, here is the evidence, it fits into this theory. So if I do need a theory to sort of hide behind, then this is the theory I will use. But really, here's the evidence. It's statistically viable. We should go out there and do this. Also, teaching kids is tough. Teaching teachers is tougher. It's one of the worst problems that you can face, because added to everything else, there's a certain adult stance that develops into grown-ups who come back to study and who are not receiving what they're studying. They are now constructing what they're studying, and then it becomes very much their product, and they're quite jealous of it. They're quite they're angry if you try and change anything in it, so it's a problem of social complexities, not educational complexities. Maybe one of the ways that it'll actually work is if we are able to show that this can work in a multiple number of countries.
In terms of where this is working, are there some specific places or examples that you'd like to add to what you've already said?
Just inside of India, each state is so vibrantly different from the other. It's like a set of different countries all slammed together. So across India, if you do this and you come out successful, that's a great piece of thing. But we've been very welcomed in both Kenya and Zambia, Ghana, Namibia. I think that we can very easily take different countries in Africa and show them that it works there as well. And it's not even expensive, because the app is already built. So the major cost of it is already done. What you're doing is sitting. What I think would work is sit with 20 teachers and build your country's curriculum, putting emphasis on where you want the emphasis to be. Use local examples, use local farming methods, use local problems, use local names, local pictures, local colors, and build a product for yourself and put it out there. It should be done in about 6 to 8 months. And you run it as an experiment. And if that changes teachers, and we have seen it change all the way from the border of China all the way to the bottom of India, in different states. So all we have to do is to show that it works. And then we can possibly build a theory behind it. So you're flipping the way you're, growing a new theory of change,
Is there anything else you'd like to add? I really appreciate the way you've addressed all the questions, but anything that needs to be asked or said?
I'm also thinking that, what might be the next step be? Because now that we are taking a big step, we can split it up among many groups that can work at this, because it's easy enough to do, to actually action on the field. Once people have understood the theory of this, then to action it on the field is quite easy to do. And the results come in thick and fast. But I think that it would paint the base paint on which you can stand and build further. Right now, there's no base to hold all the changes you want to make.
This has been very, very helpful. Is there anyone else you'd suggest I contact and interview for this work?
Okay. So you just said the one person I was going to say would be Kevin Bartlett, but
he stimulated a lot of discussion, and really looking forward to learning what it is that some of the specifics about what he's doing.
Yes, yeah. There is the other the brokering that happened between what he does, the curriculum that he has built, and the curriculum that we are notching into. He has a curriculum, and we are trying to put ours like this so that we get the stability of the entire product. So he is an important part of the honesty with which we are causing the change.
Well, I very much appreciate all the time and insight that you've given, and I'm looking forward to working further with this. So thank you very, very much.
Thank you.